Class starts in 8 minutes. I'm just preparing for the class, and I hope whoever is attending actually did get their emails and they know what they were supposed to do. And also regarding assignments, this week there is an assignment that you need to submit. I'm trying to look for the assignment. So I asked everyone to actually watch In Utero. It is actually quite nice. I also put the assignment there. Where's the assignment? Really, I can't find my assignment. There is an assignment that students have to go through, and I also uploaded the In Utero documentary on the drive. So I hope everyone got the. Yeah, I can't find the assignment. Where did I put the assignment? Come on. Oh, guys, I can't find the assignment. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I uploaded the assignment, and also, but I will send emails. And also please go to the link that I sent the first time. There is you will go through the documentary In Utero. So it does talk about trauma, and we are going to be doing that. I think I should upload a video every week for you guys because here, the assignment. So the assignment, there is also an assignment. It's on the Google Drive. So the assignment is about the reflection on the In Utero and generational trauma movie. So the documentary is there. For those who don't have access to the documentary, I have uploaded it onto the drive. So you can click on it and then watch the documentary. It's actually quite informative and very nice. So the assignment due date is on the 16th, 11:59 EST. So that's Standard Eastern Time. Is on the 16th. So the assignment word count is 1,500 words. And the assignment overview. Let me put this down. Oh my gosh, because I was getting ready and come on, click, stick. Thank you. Okay. So the assignment overview, the documentary In Utero explores how trauma begins before birth and how intergenerational patterns of stress, attachment, and adversity shape human development. So the movie or the documentary actually talks about that, how our attachment and our trauma starts while we are in the womb. So that is what it's about. So this assignment actually requires you to critically engage with the film, and also to reflect on your own family history and analyze the role of inherited trauma through an academic lens. So this is where you're actually going to go through the movie, watch it, and then look at it from an academic lens, but also from your own perspective. Remember, if we are saying that eventually at the end of the course, you actually have to understand how to heal your own trauma so that you can make better decisions. You have to look at it in your own way. So when students actually get to study psychology or mental health or counseling, you have to do a deep reflection on your own, like on your own life, or the things that are happening. You have to do it on your own. I remember when I did Psychology 101, I had to reflect on my own life. That's why in South Africa, even if you are supposed, when you apply to actually do a master's, they check how well equipped you are mentally. So you literally have to be mentally sane for you to be able to do a master's in psychology. They vet everything and also your mental stability. So yeah, that's what it's about. So you're going to use concepts from It Didn't Start With You, and also from The Body Keeps the Score. So you will examine how generational trauma manifests and how it influences identity, relationships, and also mental health. So that is the assignment is 1,500 to 2,000 words. So it also has a guiding questions. Your paper should be structured as an academic reflection, integrating personal insights while also grounding your analysis in theory and research. Use the following questions to guide your response. Hi, Miss Lee. So it was just, I gave you questions to help you with that. So, number one, the impact of prenatal trauma. How does in utero illustrate the influence of maternal stress and trauma on a developing fetus? Can you identify any parallels between the documentary's findings and your own family's experiences? So when you look at your own family's experiences, what does it say? Because you are going to go through in utero and then yes, and see how it goes. I think if we were not using TikTok, we would actually reflect on the documentary, a bit of it online. But unfortunately, we can't do that because TikTok will shadow ban me. TikTok will just say I'm crazy. They actually like doing that. And then the second question would be about intergenerational trauma and also family patterns. So you're going to reflect on It Didn't Start With You, and how does violence work, explain how trauma is transmitted across generations, and are there any patterns of trauma, anxiety, and unresolved grief in your family history that align with the concepts discussed in the book and film? So there is this movie on the Hilly Billy. I remember when I did a course on sexology. It was part of sexology. And I realized on the patterns of trauma, how it got passed down by some documentary that I watched in that class. And then we also in the questions you also have the body's response to trauma. How does the body keeps the score? Deepen our understanding of how trauma is stored in the body and nervous system. Have you or your family members experienced physical or psychological symptoms that could be linked to intergenerational trauma? And then breaking the cycle as well. What strategies do the books and films suggest for recognizing and healing inherited trauma? And based on your reflections, what steps can individuals take to disrupt generational trauma and promote healing? So that is basically what the assignment is about. So I would like for you guys to use APA or Harvard referencing to cite in neutral. It didn't start with you. The body keeps the score, and any additional sources that you could have found when you were busy clicking and trying to do a bit of research. And then please also maintain an academic lens or tone while integrating personal insights. So balance personal reflections with theoretical analysis, and then include critical analysis rather than just personal opinion. Support reflections with research and concepts from the book and also the film, and also organize your paper logically with an introduction, body paragraphs, responding to the guiding questions, and also a conclusion. But you can find this on Google Drive. Um, so the criteria when it comes to scoring, assessment criteria points, total points are 100. So it will be about your depth of reflection, your theoretical integration, your critical analysis, and also structure and coherence, and then referencing and academic writing. So late submissions will not be graded. So if you submit your paper later, it will not be graded. thank you for the likes. It will not be graded. And then you can submit the PDF or Word document via email. And then the file name will be your name, in utero reflection, and then that's how you will name it. But the guide is on Google Drive. Guys, please try to go on Google Drive sometimes when you're during the week. I normally just upload some of the work. You'll find it on Google Drive. So yeah, we may start. So this week we are going to talk about intergenerational trauma and also epigenetics. So that's what we are basically talking about. So it is about understanding the concept of intergenerational trauma and its transmission mechanisms. We are also going to try and gain foundational knowledge of epigenetics and how trauma affects gene expressions, and then recognize the biological, psychological, and social factors that are contributing to trauma transmission from one generation to the next. Explore clinical approaches to addressing intergenerational traumas. Also learn strategies for breaking the cycle of inherited trauma. A whole lot of people actually have inherited trauma from their great grandparents, but they don't know this. And then we also have a bit on research, imaging research areas and long-term effects of intergenerational trauma as well. And then identify ways to apply this knowledge in personal and professional settings. So that's where you are going to take whatever from here and try to do your own thing. So once again, welcome everyone. So today we are actually going to be discussing that, and yeah, so I know that a lot of people have wondered if the struggles in their grandparents or parents might still affect them today. Research actually does suggest that trauma can actually be passed down through generations, both psychologically and biologically. So this is not just a psychological thing, but also on a biological level, you can actually have trauma get passed down from generation to generation. So we will look at how trauma moves across generations and how we can break the cycle. So please comment there. I'm going to ask you questions. Have you ever heard of intergenerational trauma? And also, do you think that trauma can be passed down to families? And in a normal class, I would also ask this question of what are some ways family history might affect an individual's life? So, do you think trauma can be passed down through families? From my research, even before I started research, yes and yes, yes. I also think that I think trauma can be passed down through families, and not just on a biological, but also on an environmental and behavior perspective. Sometimes I will give an example with when it comes to cheating. You see the dad or the husband in this family um, cheats, and then behaviorally the sons and the other parts of the family members also cheat. So it can be passed down from one family member. Yes, I also agree. I do believe that trauma can be passed down. So now let's start with understanding intergenerational trauma. So, intergenerational trauma refers to trauma that is not only experienced by one person, but it also affects their descendants. So, I know that in South Africa, because of apartheid, in the US, because of slavery, that trauma has been embedded in a whole lot of people. It's trauma that has been passed down from one person to the next, and most especially in the Black community. We can see by how people act. Yes, you did not go through slavery. Yes, you did not go through apartheid. But how you are acting now and the decisions that you are making, you can tell that trauma has been embedded in you through those channels. So, which means it affected from one generation to the next. So this can happen in many ways, from things like learned behaviors to change in biology. So let's say, for example, if a person experiences war, their stress response and survival behaviors can be passed down to their children. That's why a whole lot of people, it's just that it is not really looked into, but a lot of people in the Black community, as you look at it, they are predispositioned to actually be addicts. There is that element of addiction, and it's because it's finding ways, trying to find ways to cope with the intergenerational trauma that has been passed down to us. You know, we do know that those other people do, the YTs do actually go through it, but Black people are more because of the genetic predisposition, and also from the fact that their descendants or their great grandparents or their ancestors, actually their ancestors, not descendants, their ancestors went through some traumatic events. So now what's happening is that we are responding. Our stress response and survival behaviors actually come from our ancestors because of what they went through. So intergenerational trauma, as I have said, is trauma that carries over from one generation to the next. It can also influence emotional and behavioral and even physical health. So that's why sometimes you find that physically, physiologically, if you look at it, most people, most Black women, and I will always be an advocate for Black women. Most Black women actually have autoimmune diseases, most especially when we grow older or when they grow older. And research was that because of how we are when it comes to emotions, because of society, because we live in a society that is embedded in, let's say, patriarchy. So we are apologists, we are emotional. So we would rather keep quiet and keep the peace than actually speak out about a whole lot of things and emotions, and that thing in the long run causes a lot of autoimmune diseases. So when I say physiological and physical health, it's things like that. You find that your body hurts, you carry your stress on your shoulders, or you carry your trauma on your shoulders, and you find that it's actually just trauma that was passed down to you from your ancestors. And it is also seen in many cultural and historical contexts, such as communities affected by slavery, genocide, and even war. We can see generational or intergenerational trauma in those communities. It's because our ancestors did the best that they could to actually survive and make sure that they are okay. So the fear that they had, it's still embedded in us on a biological level. That's just the unfortunate part when it comes to that. And we also have the transmission mechanisms. There are four ways in which trauma actually gets passed down from generation to generation. The first part is behavioral patterns and parenting styles. So, how your parents parent you, or their parenting style is, actually does affect you. So, most Black people don't necessarily know how to be affectionate even to their kids. So you find that that traumatic experience of not feeling warmth and love makes it a bit difficult. In Utero, the movie, I someone asked a heroin addict that, why do you do this? And that person mentioned that it actually felt like a warm hug. Like my first jab felt like love. So, hence I say behavioral and parenting styles. So, when you're neglected and you are not loved, you're not given that warm hug, you will spend your whole life searching for it in the wrong places. So, what that drug did to them, it made them feel the warmness that they never felt from the parent or from home. So that's why you also find kids who actually date older people. And it's, when we say they are grooming you, it's not from a sense of, oh yeah, she just likes him, whatever. most times you find that it's also from the parenting style. The mere fact that maybe your father was the first, most especially with women, you find that your father was the first person to neglect you, to reject you. So that's why sometimes you would find that you are choosing partners that are not emotionally available, because you don't know what emotional availability looks like in a man. I mean, your father showed you from the get go, from the jump, that, yeah, so for you to be able to do that, you have to heal your tissues, you have to heal on a cellular level. Yes, so those things do affect us in that way, simply because of one thing that your dad did or your mother did. Your mother can say one thing to you, and then you go your whole life traumatized and thinking. Even teachers, a teacher can say something to you in primary, and it will affect you your whole life. So the second part, or the second key way in which trauma can be passed down, is emotional inheritance and psychological responses. So when we say emotional inheritance, you can see how, your mother is so emotional and she is so reactive, because she does not know better. She does not know how to deal with those things. So now you kind of inherit it on an emotional level, because this is how the reaction is, then you also react in that way. The third one is always in biological changes through epigenetics. Last week we did mention that epigenetics does change the gene factor in how we behave in the next generation. So whatever we're going through right now, in the next generation, it might be worse or it might be better, depending on how you as an individual actually are able to cope with that stress, and also your healing strategies and all that. I always give an analogy of a filthy cup, a cup with filthy water. So if your mom pass it down to you, you get water that is contaminated, that is dirty. But if you decide to get positive coping mechanisms and techniques and tools, then that's where the part of clean water comes in. And the more you pour, it's not going to be easy. The first time it's going to look like it's not making any changes. You're trying to clean it, but you're not necessarily getting anywhere. However, the more water you pour, the more clean water you pour in that dirty or contaminated water, the cleaner it actually becomes. So that's how it is with healing strategies. We might have gotten all these trauma, and it might be embedded in us, but at the level and the point that we are right now, we are actually able to change it. We have the capabilities of changing the concept and changing it for our future generations, most especially our kids. Remember, coming from your lineage, so now you know that, okay, they were my great grandparents went through slavery, but now, because I am where I am and the decisions that I've made, the financial decisions, most especially, I've seen that when it comes to a whole lot of people, it will affect you in a financial manner. Whatever, I always say, whatever decision you make, somewhere, somehow, it's going to affect your finances. You might be sitting at home doing nothing, it will affect your finances. So most of the decisions that we make actually do affect our finances, and we were never taught how trauma can actually have make us have the financial wound. So, but the more strategies you're able to build, you are able to pass it down to your generation, and it's healthier coping mechanisms, it's healthier ways of seeing life differently. And the fourth one is cultural and societal transmission. So certain societal expectations and transmissions and cultural aspects make it difficult for people to actually heal, simply because you will get things like, I always say, because we live in a world or a society that is currently embedded on patriarchy, so certain things are not necessarily easy to heal, most especially for women. I'll give an example with and I'll keep on. I'm sorry, but I will go back to Black women. It was believed for the longest time that kids and Black women um, don't feel pain as the whitey women. So research was never like there isn't a lot of research that has been done on people of color. when it comes to surgery, operations and all that. So it was believed that um, we don't necessarily feel a lot of physical pain. So that's where you find that it becomes difficult to advocate, most especially, when someone is sick and comes to the hospital. Now you have to explain that no, simply because she is of this color, it doesn't mean so. And I think the concept came from slavery, because that time the slave masters wanted to do anything to our people. They just, so it was for them to be able to grasp and convince other people that it's okay. It was the concept of they don't necessarily feel pain like us, you know. And because, when you're a slave, when you are colonized, you would get a beating and be quiet about it. You would feel it, but you find that you're emotionally numb because of the things that you're going through. So it's not easy to react when you are emotionally numb. Someone can hit you and punch you now, and you do feel the pain, but because emotionally you're numb, you do not react. You're just quiet. You take it, because either way, even fighting it won't help you. So that is where the concept, I believe that is where the concept came from, that believes that people of color do not necessarily feel pain as other people, of which is a lie. We are human. We do feel pain. So those societal transmission and cultural transmission make it difficult in so many settings to be able to advocate, because you will be told that research say this. It's the same when it comes to as much as we know that COVID was, things are coming out about COVID right now, there are so many theories when it comes to that. However, there was a time when it started, we were told that people of color don't they have they have antibodies to be able to fight it more than people of certain colors. So it was just that concept of trying to advocate so that we can have the same level of care, because even when it comes to certain transplants, I mean, in the health sector, it's more prevalent. I think it's prevalent in every sector, but it's so unfair in the health sector, because I have been in the health sector, and you will try to advocate. I'll give you an example. So examples of intergenerational trauma can include, this one is one that has been researched for the longest time, the Holocaust survivors and their descendants, and also indigenous communities impacted by colonization, children of wars and refugees, and families affected by historical systematic oppression. So, even when it comes to poverty, because of systematic oppression, when someone makes it out of the hood, when someone makes it out, and it becomes something so beautiful to watch, and we are like, oh, that is so excellent. Unfortunately, most people have been programmed that I will never get out. This is where I am. So it's those things that where cultural and societal transmissions actually come into play. And then when it comes to the impact on mental and physical health, we have people who actually have increased rates of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, Even in relationships, I always say most people actually have PTSD related to romantic relationships. You find that you don't trust anyone, you don't trust anymore. Um, I will revert back to how you were raised. Your parents never showed you love and all that. Your mother mistreated your dad, or vice versa. Your dad mistreated your mom or did not accept, and all those things. When you choose a life partner, when you choose a romantic partner, you will gravitate towards people who will neglect you. You might find that most times you are actually a people's pleaser, because your trauma made you or makes you believe that the only way for people to be able to love you is if you put them first. Because when you look at your generation and you look at how it went down for your parents, and the neglect that you were given, then it means they did something wrong. You find that you overcompensate in certain situations. Even at work, you find that You get a job today and within a week you're done with deadlines, and they're like, "Oh, you're a hard worker." Sometimes that is just a stress response, because for you to you need for you to be loved or to be noticed, you believe that you actually have to work extra hard. When you look at it, you find that maybe your mom or your dad used to say those things, that okay, for you to be able to for your mother to acknowledge you, when you were younger, you would have done something very good at school, or you would have cleaned, you would have helped her with the kids, and she would be like, "Yeah, thank you, you did great." And for some people, it goes either way. For some people, it's by being horrible people. You find that this person is a bully. This person um, doesn't act the correct way, because the only time they actually got to feel some sense of attention from home was when they acted bad, when they acted out of a norm. So those things also come into play when it comes to how trauma will shape you. And then, people who have been impacted by intergenerational trauma also have a higher vulnerability to chronic illnesses, back pains, high blood pressure, kidney problems, liver, because you are stressed, because you are operating on a high stress level. Your body does not know how to react or does not know how to act. So you find that now your immune system is compromised. The more stressed you are, the more compromised you are when it comes to yes, Lerato, it's a lot. We are going through a lot, hey? So, um, when you go through, you find that because of those things, now your immune system gets affected. So when your immune system gets affected, then it means that your immune system will not be able to fight all these things that you encounter. So that's why when you are stressed at work or you have a lot of stress, you become a bit fluish. When you are fatigued and you don't really sleep properly, you find that you get a bit sickish. There is that bit of fever, that is where it comes from. So it means when you actually have unprocessed generational trauma, and also because of the stress, you have a higher vulnerability to chronic illnesses, dementia, um, yeah, and high blood pressure, sugar, diabetes. So it's those things. So another way it can actually impact mental and physical health is difficulty in forming secure relationships. A lot of people who have struggled with this have the anxious attachment style. So you find that you have difficulty in forming secure relationships because of that. I will answer your questions a bit later. I will do that. Please wait for a bit, Lerato. But I like your question. So you find that even romantic relationships, if you look at it, people in this generation right now struggle with forming healthy relationships. It's because of what transpired in the past, and we are seeing it that no, that was toxic, that was unhealthy. We are just trying to make sure that we build healthier relationships and healthier attachments. However, because of that trauma, it becomes difficult. And I always say, if you look at it, a lot of women, their grandmothers, if you ask your grandmother right now, like, hey, what should I do? Marriage, da 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 da. Your grandmother will tell you that what you should do is make sure that you're independent. So you can imagine that your attachment styles also come into play. And then we also have higher risk of substance abuse and maladaptive coping mechanisms. A lot of people, because things like alcohol is legal. So people don't necessarily see alcohol as an addiction, of which that is incorrect, because we know that when it comes to this, it is an addiction. So people cope by drinking alcohol, by taking substances. You're at a risk of addiction. You might find that some people actually have sexual intercourse with different people. Um, that's risky behavior. So yes, also food, the way we eat, the lifestyles we live. Most people will tell you that when I'm stressed, I eat a lot and I eat a lot of junk food. Um, that's a negative coping mechanism. People smoke. We have built these things that because they are actually legal, then it means they are okay. And I always remind people that at some point slavery was legal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was okay. So it's the same with the current status quo. Certain things might be legal, but it does not mean that they are okay. Because when I love the fact that you mentioned food. So when you talk about things like food, um, you find that in certain countries, when you try to buy food that is healthier, it's more expensive. So what you are fed and what you are given, it's food that is not good for your body and not good for your mental health. And the system wants us to operate on that level. You can't necessarily wake yourself up in that regard. So yes, people do see food, and it's when we say food, it's unhealthy food. We eat a whole lot of GMOs and a whole lot of sugar. Because in a day, a woman is supposed to just eat 2 teaspoons of sugar, I think. So you can imagine when everything we eat right now has sugar, has a lot of sugar in it. So it also makes us, we're also going to pass those things down to our generation, just by the way. All these GMOs and fake foods, however, it's going to affect us physiologically on a genetic and molecular level. We are going to pass it down. And the relationship we also have with food, psychologically, we are going to pass it down unless we ourselves decide to change. So the signs of inherited trauma. So now I want us to look at the signs of inherited trauma, which is epigenetics. So epigenetics is the study of how genes can be turned on or even off by environmental factors. So this includes things like stress and trauma. So unlike genetic mutation meaning when your genes actually mutate, which actually also changes DNA sequence, epigenetics changes the affect actually they affect how genes function. They don't necessarily change our DNA sequence, but the change in epigenetics affect how genes function. So, the basic principle is that trauma doesn't change DNA itself, but it changes how certain gene works, right? So these modifications can also be inherited, meaning that a person's trauma can influence their children and their grandchildren. So we are not saying it's going to change your genetics on a molecular level or sequence in your DNA and how they replicate or how they mutate, but that modification, how it got modified, for example, how you are actually going to respond to trauma is going to modify that. And then that is actually gene modification, how your stress response and your behavior, that one will also be inherited by your kids. Let's say in cheating, because in certain places, in certain families, it has been normalized. You find that that is because of it started from one trauma. Let's say a woman goes through a husband who cheats, who does that, and then because of the trauma, and because now she has her attachment style is now anxious, she decides, F this, I'm also going to cheat. And then she decides that, okay, I'm going to cheat back. And then now because of that trauma and how she responded to the stress or high level, it might actually modify um, her response to stress and things like cheating and infidelity. And then it will modify, and it can be inherited, meaning that her kids in the future might actually inherit that part of the modification or the modified sequence of reaction to trauma. And the key markers of epigenetic changes, we actually have the main key markers. So we have histone modifications which affect gene accessibility. We have non-coding RNA changes which also influence gene function, and we also have DNA methylation, which also turns genes on and off. So those are how the key markers of genetics actually change DNA. It's DNA methylation. Oh, please don't ask me to call with you. So, those things can actually do that on an epigenetic level. RNA, how does it work? So when we talk about it, it means that changes in gene expressions that actually do occur without altering or if, the underlying DNA sequence. So it acts as a switch to turn gene and on and off, as I said, by modifying how accessible the DNA is to the transcription machinery. So DNA methylation directly adds to chemical tags to DNA and to repress gene expression. So those are how it can actually get modified. In the simplest way, so to say, I try to explain it to the best of my ability. Um, you know, as I said, trauma doesn't change DNA itself, but it changes how certain genes work. So the gene will not change, but how they work and how they respond to certain things, it will change them. Like, when your immune system gets weakened, now that is how trauma affected that genetic factor where it was supposed to fight for you when you were going through certain things, when your immune system was affected. However, because of the modification, you are unable to fight off certain illnesses, which means you're now vulnerable to getting chronic illnesses. So this modification can also be inherited, meaning that a person's trauma can influence your kids. Um, there's a paper. I don't know if you guys saw it. It's part of the notes. It actually talks about when individuals express traumatic events, the impact can extend beyond their own lifetimes, and it also affects their descendants in a long-lasting and sometimes unexpected ways. So, like intergenerational trauma refers to the transmission. It explains. I would like for you guys to go through that. The link is also on the notes. It explains a whole lot of things when it comes to that. So, it has long lasting implications on health and also well being through your life. So, like adverse childhood experiences. Um, Before the age of 18 has been associated with adverse health related behaviors, even mental health conditions, as I said, and also increased risks of illnesses, just like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and even cancer. So sometimes you find that predisposition, or the exposure of the child, like the child being exposed to that trauma, the child might actually get diabetes, might actually get cardiovascular diseases as an adult, because all these things happened when you were younger. Those things now are only showing up in your adulthood. So they also the effects of psychological stressors can also extend across generation, meaning, like I said, so it also through non-generic intergenerational or even transgenerational inheritance. So there is like a lot of growing body of literature that is investigating how this can contribute to the biological embedding of ACEs, like the epigenetic markers, including DNA methylation, like I have explained. This might be involved in linking ACEs to health through programming of immune regulation, and also neurodevelopment, and the as well. I've been seeing a lot of kids being diagnosed with autism, and I've been wondering a lot about it, on the fact that maybe, just maybe, intergenerational trauma might have a bit to do with that, because it is on an alarming level. Because a couple of years back it was not as bad as this. Now we have a whole lot of diagnosis for autism, and it worries me, because I mean, neurodevelopment, and when you are neurodivergent, what does it mean? Where did it start? And that's where the part of in utero comes in. I am going to touch a bit on it in a few. So now, when it comes to solutions on how we can break the cycle of intergenerational trauma, um, therapy and early intervention, and also lifestyle changes can all make a difference. That is just the reality of it as well. Sometimes we shy away from it. So we have therapies that focus on multiple generations. These are more effective. And we also have trauma informed care, which is also essential for healing. So, holistic healing approaches, so including things like diet, exercise, social support, play a role. They also can help you with that. I love holistic healing approaches, because they focus on the body, mind, and soul, or spirit, or energy, whatever you want to call it. They don't necessarily just focus on your brain. They don't just focus on your mind. They focus on your whole body. And I've realized that many holistic healing approaches also try to find the root cause. Not just, you go to the doctor, you come today, I give you a prescription, oh, you should take this. And then it's when, thank you, ma'am, I'm done. When, bam, thank you, ma'am, done. That's it. So with holistic approaches don't normally treat the symptom, but they treat the root cause. So I always advocate for holistic because of that. So when it comes to prevention strategies, things like prenatal care and stress reduction are crucial, most especially if you are going to, when we're looking at in utero and passing down your trauma to your kids. So prenatal care, like limit stress, and all those things. It can actually help with that. So when we talk about in utero, um, the series talks about how this how kids um, actually inherit the stress while they are still in the womb. While you're pregnant, whatever you're going through, your child goes through it, the pain and everything. But I also want to put a disclaimer on this, because I know that people tried to use this stance when it comes to pro-choice and pro-life, in a sense that people believe that pro-life means that a baby is once you're pregnant, it means your baby can feel anything. However, that is not necessarily the case. Certain things you can see that they start developing after week 25. So it's not to say that the child or the fetus is not alive and all that, but certain things and features after that. So that's why you find that within 12 months, 12 weeks, it is the limit in most cases when it comes to termination. And after 12 weeks, it would be sense of if your life is in danger, health related risks. So, but in utero speaks about how kids feel, the fetus feels everything in the womb. So, some people say, I've heard parents say, but I adopted my child at birth. What do you mean trauma? You find that I did everything that I could to make sure that this child doesn't go through any trauma. But a doctor can come and tell you that no, this child actually has been through trauma. So, we have things like fetal trauma. So when we understand that there are many developmental milestones for the child to occur prior to birth, your child began feeling and also learning in the womb. So your baby learned to be comforted by the voice that he or she heard and the heartbeat of his mother well before birth. So that is the case. So a voice that was not yours, let's say you adopted the child. So you find that the voice was not yours. So the child obviously recognized the other voice. So there would be that trauma. So in this case, you find that the connective disruption has an impact on the brain and body because now the child is used to hearing that voice. So that's why you would hear people say, when you're pregnant, play certain music for your child while the child is in the womb. Talk positive, talk positively. So early pre and postnatal experiences, including early trauma, are actually encoded in the implicit memory of the fetus. So this is important how in utero talks about it. So it is located in the subcortical and also deep limbic regions of the maturing brain. So that's why you find that someone said, when you say, no, I don't know, I don't remember, it's not necessarily that you don't remember, you don't recall. The memory is there. On a cellular level, your body remembers, but your brain does not recall on what's happening. That's why when you go through a certain trauma, you would feel it in your body. Like your whole body will feel it. You will tense up, and you would not understand, why am I tensing up? Why am I in a fetal position today? Because someone said something like this to me. And then you realize later that, oh, it's because of probably the trauma that I went through or my mother went through, that she felt rejected when she was still pregnant with me, and then it actually was passed down to me. So these memories actually will travel with us into our early days of infancy and beyond. And more importantly, these early experiences set our ongoing physiological and psychological regulatory baseline. So that means that all these things that are actually located, or the memories that are embedded, those that are located in the subcortical and also deep limbic regions of the maturing brain, we carry them even after we were born or after we are born. So we carry these memories with us into our early days of infancy and beyond that, meaning even when we grow up as adults. So it shows that chaos outside the womb may affect a child in utero, meaning a child in the uterus. So this includes things like arguments, a chaotic home environment, or even an abusive spouse. Other noises, like when you live in a place that there is a lot of war, and I am scared for the kids, for the women that are pregnant right now, and the future, like how will it look like, how will they be, how will they behave in the future because of the uncertainty that's happening right now and the stress that the mothers are going through. I wonder how that will affect them when they become adults, and that. So you find that if the mother drinks or even smokes, or the mother is generally unhealthy, this can also impact in utero development. It also includes the sense of safety and its self worth for the child. So you find that child lacks confidence and does not have a lot of self-worth is because of critical brain development is also stunted in those times. because remember, the brain is still developing and a child can actually sense everything. So that is what in utero says, the research in utero, and it came out in 2015. I love it. Almost, wow, actually 10 years back. So that support actually works. It helps a lot because you find that your child going through whatever you're going through, it goes to show that we honestly need to be careful because we sense everything on that molecular level. We The decisions we make today, for you to actually go and buy you make the decision to buy a burger instead of a something that's healthier. It's a sense of that trauma that maybe your parent did. So I would like for you guys to go and watch in utero. It will help you understand this a lot, and it will help you question a lot about your life as well and your life decisions. And there is also a part of the paper that talks about how parents' trauma leaves biological traces in children. So the author actually talks about how after the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center collapsed on September 9/11, that thing really affected many people. Many were in shock, and it affected a whole lot of kids that you find that the mothers were pregnant at that time. So that fear, remember, after that happened, there was also a fear that something like that will happen again. So now you live the name is in utero. So Lerato, you can go on my bio, and on my bio you will find there is a link. There is I have a G drive. On the G drive there is coursework, there is notes, and the notes also have links. There are books. I have 3 books in there that I recommend, and there are notes. There is an assignment, and there is also the movie in neutral. Most people, I know that they would have struggled to find it. So because I have it, I just posted it on Google Drive so that you would be able to watch it and understand it. So it's there on my Google Drive. So, this research actually monitored women through their pregnancies and beyond, immediately after 9/11. So, when the babies were born, they were smaller than usual. That is what they saw. That was the first sign that the trauma of the World Trade Center attack had reached the womb. So the kids who were born were actually smaller. And 9 months later, they also examined the 8 women and their infants when they came in for a wellness visit, right? So psychological evaluations revealed that many of the mothers had developed PTSD, and those with PTSD had unusually low levels of stress-related hormone cortisol, right? And a feature that researchers were coming to associate with the disorder. So they actually had low level of cortisol. So which means whatever they they went through when it happened, the World Trade Center collapsed and all that, and there were bombings, they affected them, but the stress level, the cortisol, was very low. So surprisingly, the saliva of the 9-month-old babies of the women with PTSD showed low cortisol. So it shows that when they checked the kids also showed low cortisol. So the effect was most prominent in babies whose mothers had been in their third trimesters on that fateful day, right? Just a year. So it shows that when they did the research, people who went through that trauma, it was passed down to their kids. But those who were not, didn't really go through the trauma, their kids are able to regulate their emotions properly. Hence, I say let's look at the patterns that are happening right now. How we regulate our emotions, how we have a lot of addicts, not necessarily just drug addicts, but look at it as what's the word? Substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, sex addiction, gambling addiction, narcotics, there's a lot, and smoking and all that, and food addiction as well. So, excuse me. So you look at it, and you if you try to trace back, and you test your cortisol level. I always say, if you do have the access to healthcare and you can afford it, go and check your cortisol level. So when you check, you might find that your cortisol level is either elevated, you're operating on stress, and you find that at the time you're not stressed. There's nothing that's happening in your life that could actually warrant for you to be stressed. But because you inherited the stress hormone, so to speak, from your parent, and how you behave, and because there was that part of changing and modification, now how we actually deal with stress, because of that modification, it has affected us. And that's why you find that most people in our generation in this time have addiction. They are addicted to a lot of things. It is not necessarily when it comes to powder, but it is a whole lot of things, because we just look at it as powder. Oh, powder is ruining our kids and their lives. But in all honesty, there are other addictions like food addiction, you know, alcohol addiction, you have gambling addiction, you have social media addiction. People would literally tremble and would feel like they're losing their minds if the world was to go dark today. We will see that a lot of people actually have an addiction to scrolling online. You find that you do it even when you're not doing anything. So the most apparent route runs through parental behavior, but influences during just gestation, and even changes in eggs and cells, I mean sperms, may also play a role. So those things also play a role. When I always talk about epigenetics, I always say it actually potentially explains why effects of trauma may actually endure long after the immediate threat is gone. And it's also like epigenetic is also implicated in the diverse pathways by which trauma is transmitted to future generations. So our trauma as parents, or our parental trauma, predisposes our offsprings to be vulnerable to mental health conditions. Hence, we say it might seem like it's something that is happening in the now. However, if you actually go to you take the lengths to make sure. So I still go back. Our parents went through slavery, they went through apartheid, they went through those things. So that's why a lot of kids right now, or a lot of people whose parents were actually impacted. Hello, Baba Voss. So most of these kids, like whose parents were directly impacted right now, have a lot of mental health issues. So if you look at our generation, or the generation, the current generation we are in right now, a lot of people have, your bipolar disorder. Like I said, the one that's coming up of late is autism. We have a lot of neurodivergent people, ADHD, depression, anxiety, personality disorders as well. So when you look at it, it's the fact that the implications suggested that parental trauma actually made us vulnerable to mental health issues or mental health conditions. Um, but there's also evidence that the epigenetic response may serve as an adaptation that may also help the children of traumatized parents cope with similar adversities. So, which means, yes, it has a negative impact, right? In the sense that we are vulnerable to mental health conditions. But also, in the same line, epigenetics is also suggesting that, on a positive, I'm going to look at it as a positive, on a positive, if we were to go through, let's say, whatever they went through, maybe slavery, maybe systematic oppression, we are able, apartheid, we are able to actually cope with it better, because of epigenetics, simply because our parents dealt with it. So, which means we are also predispositioned to the ability of dealing with it. That's why. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say this. Please forgive me. Don't come for me. Right. That's why, if you look at it, I'm going to talk about the Trump administration right now. Look at it this way. People of color have been complaining for years. Like we are struggling. We are sidelined, and that's why HillmanTok University actually came about, because of how funding was pulled out to actually help people of color get education, right? Like for people of color to get that advantage, so they did not want that. So you can imagine, you've been exposed to it for the longest times. Your grandparents and all that, your ancestors were also used to it. And then it comes to you now, you are going through it. And with you going through it, because you are used to it, you are able to jump back and be like, okay, your grandparents went through it, you're going through it. Let's just find ways to make sure that we get the better deal as well. And things changed. But the other people of the fair color, the Caucasians, are currently complaining because they do not know struggle. They do not understand the struggle. So hence I say it. I'm looking at it as a positive because it is also helping us, people of color, to be able to deal with these things when they are coming our way. When the world is changing right now, we are able to deal with it because our parents and our ancestors dealt with it, and they actually succeeded. And we are like, yeah, we know it. We've seen this before. So that trauma that actually changed us in a negative way and gave us all these other mental health conditions also gave us a resilience and survival as well. It's not just the negative. There is a bit of positive to it, because we also got, the resilient gene. We are very resilient as people. We are able to fight back. I think that's why most people right now, they are saying, people of color are actually saying, oh, because it's a white, and now it's affecting Caucasians, we have to come to the party. We are not joining in because we are used to it. And it's actually the same in South Africa. People were Caucasians were marching the other day, and we were like, this is not our fight, because we have been asking you guys to come to the table and fight with us, but you're not. So it's okay, it's your fight, because they're not used to that. So it gave us resilience. So let's not look at it only in the negative as well. So yeah, it also helps us. So um this article, you please go through it. It also talks about the fight, flight, and freeze. So when unraveling the tangle of trauma, cortisol, and PTSD has occupied this author and other researchers for decades. I'm also one of the people who have been researching trauma for the longest time. I'm trying to understand how it works. So the hormone prompts and changes, such as quickening the pulse, and also sharpening the senses to enable that. Okay, now you're scared. So what does that mean? Psychologically, it also affects you. I mean, if physiologically you're being affected by this, you have sweaty palms and all that, it actually cause acute effects that will make you think that you are in danger even when you're not. So please go read the paper, go through the work, and please do submit the assignment. You will get graded. I will give you your feedback when it comes to this. And then there is also a part of understanding biomarkers for epigenetics when it comes to adverse experiences and health. So it shows those things as well. And then also biological embedding of early life adversity and a scoping review of evidence for intergenerational epigenetic transmission of stress and trauma in humans, not in animals, but in humans, because we know that it can impact health, and it shows that it can biologically be embedded and causing all these other health outcomes decades later. So, for the mere fact that you might have depression, for the mere fact that you might actually have a bad relationship with food, or you might be addicted to something, this can be something that was embedded due to generational trauma. Hence, I asked you guys when you write your assignment to actually look at your family. This would be very interesting in the sense that now you will be able to look at it in that lens where you're like, okay, this is what's going on. My family went through this. Oh, maybe that's why I am going through this. Maybe that's why I have this. And that will be a way for you to also be able to find and you now know the root cause. So since you know the root cause, how are you going to change it? Because now you understand this is what's going on. How am I changing it? So that is what's going on. So please do the assignment and go through it, because whatever you might be going through now might actually just be your ancestors' karma. Karma that came from your ancestors. You're just carrying other people's problems into your life. It's not necessarily yours. You're just carrying it. So the best thing for you to do is just make sure that it does not get passed down to your kids or to the next generation. So now, Lerato, I'm going to read to answer your question. Before I answer your question, so when it comes to future um, research, right? You find that there is a lot of research that is done on intergenerational trauma. So it is constantly evolving at this point in time. Um, there is a lot that we can see. Scientists are working on advanced mapping techniques that could help us better understand how trauma is inherited. The generational markers, how is it going? So we have new studies that focus on reversing epigenetic trauma through therapeutic interventions. Hence, I said when it comes to us going to talk about how to heal this, we will also look at reversing epigenetics. But I think the downside to this one is the fact that when we reverse it, we might also be reversing the parts where we are resilient and we can take anything. I just hope it doesn't it doesn't get to that point. And then we also have advanced epigenetic mapping, which is helping identify specific gene expressions linked to trauma. And AI, by the way. Artificial intelligence is also being used to analyze genetic and behavioral patterns in trauma survivors. And then also potential gene therapy interventions are being explored to mitigate the effects of inherited trauma. And also neuroscientific advances in neuroplasticity and brain resilience are providing new insights. I also love neuroplasticity because neuroplasticity helps us actually build new neural pathways, right? So you find that, excuse me, neuroplasticity, now we are at a point where you have been damaged because of the intergenerational trauma, but because of neuroplasticity you can build new neural pathways that are positive, that will actually help you in the future. So I think next week we should actually integrate neuroplasticity in helping you guys understand it better, and how you can integrate it into building new neurons or thinking patterns for you. Let's see. Lerato, let me see your question. It's a bit far up. My gosh, Lerato, I can't find your your question. Please, please, so I did. Okay, been doing some therapy work, but how does one know if core underlying issues are being addressed? So most times when it comes to your therapist, right? Your therapist helps you go through your own issues to find the root causes. So most people think that a therapist, a psychologist, when you get there, you sit down, you talk, he or she gives you advice. It's not that. What a therapist helps you with is for you to reflect. You go inward. She will ask you questions that will help you do an introspection. So the introspection that you're doing when you're busy answering the question will be where you're able to pinpoint that, oh, this is where the trauma started. This is where I actually, oh my gosh, my phone is overheated. Okay, it's getting better. Okay. So it's where, you get to understand these are the root causes. This is where it all started for me. The reason I'm doing this thing, so I'm acting this way, is because of that. So also being self-aware and understanding your childhood and can help. I'll give an example with the relationship with food. Some people, because when they were growing up, they did not necessarily have a lot. They were living from they were living in quote unquote, for lack of a better word, poverty. So this person now, because is able to afford certain things, this person overeats, does not have, when you were growing up, you would have access to certain things, and then now, because you have access to a bit of money, you buy things, you have a bad relationship with food, you just eat, 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 because you never really got to experience that when you were younger. So now that bad relationship grows, because whatever you do every day becomes a habit, and once it has become a habit, that wound of poverty has grown into now a unhealthy relationship with food, an unhealthy relationship with people as well. So it's also understanding, doing a bit of introspection for you to know that, okay, I am working correctly, this is what I'm supposed to be working on. I'll give you an example with me. For me to be where I am and be this person who studies a lot, I'm one person who actually studies or studied a lot. um so it was because at some point when I was growing up, someone decided, in one of my family members decided that, oh, you are never going to be anything, and so I like, you won't amount to anything. So that trauma was what drove me. So I always tell people that the trauma that I went through actually drove me to be a successful person, simply because I wanted to prove that. So if I'm not doing anything, well, back in the day, when I would not do anything, if I was not studying, if I was not working, and I had to relax, I did not know how to relax, because I had attached my self-worth to being busy, to staying busy. So that trauma of thinking that I will not be anything, was embedded in the fact that, because I believe that if I'm not doing anything, then I will never be anything. So I have to be constantly working. So that's where I pinpointed it, and then I was able to work through it that way. So with you, Lerato, you also, yes, you're going through therapy, but therapy is about helping you look back on, you do an introspection to see what transpired. Oh, maybe when I was a child, I went through this. That's why I am doing this. Maybe that's why I am struggling with relationships, because I never saw healthy relationships, because maybe my dad left me, or yes, it helps you with your self awareness. Maybe my dad did this, maybe my mom did that, maybe that's why I'm acting this way. So those are the things and the patterns that when you go through therapy, it will help you. However, I always say talk therapy is not the only way to go, because for some people going through talk therapy, it will actually re-traumatize you, depending on how severe your trauma is. You will have to see a specialist, someone who is a trauma informed therapist. Specialists know how to deal with those situations. So yes. Does anyone else have a question? I am done with today's lesson. Does anyone else have a question? So if there's no question, then it's okay. Thank you for coming, everyone. Um, the tools that you have, the positive tools that you have right now, try to, because you're more aware, even. All right, thank you, Miss Lee's World, and thank you for coming. And I also appreciate you for coming. I love it. You know, you're consistent. So Lerato, when it comes to the tools that you have and not knowing whether or not they are correct, when you use one, look at how it look at the consequence or the aftermath. Is it a positive change? Is it a negative change? Because you're more self-aware, it's beautiful that when you do certain things, you're able to say, "Ooh, no, that's not what I was supposed to do or what I was supposed to say." Let's say now you overreact. Someone does something and you flip, you overreact. And then later you sit down, you're doing an introspection, you reflect, you're like, damn, I shouldn't have overreacted. What could I have done better? So those are the tools. What could I have done differently? And then that's how we learn. Remember, you're being given, but for you to put it in practice, you can't just wake up and then it is in practice today. No, you wake up and it takes practice for it to actually be a habit. So you might have the information now and have the tools, but by practicing those tools and building a habit, then that's when you will know and that, okay, I'm building positive coping mechanisms for this. So, yes, thank you for coming, everyone. Please submit by the 16th, which is next week. Submit the assignment, and on the Google Drive, you will find the movie. You will also find the assignment. It is written in there what you're supposed to do. So, thank you very much. The name of the assignment, where is it? It's written assignment reflection on in utero and generational trauma. So you will get it there. Please type it. Try to use APA, and please don't use AI. My students are actively using AI. You can use AI, but to help you, not to write your whole paper. So please try not to use the whole AI, so that next week when we start. Oh, it's next week around this time, an hour before this time. I will create a video during the week. Aski Sibomi. I will create a video, and then it will also show you the live time. I will click and create a live event so that you know the time that I'm going to be live. It's going to be next week around this time. But you can also find the this session on I love you too. You can find it on YouTube. I'm going to upload it later today. You will find it and you can go through it. All right. Thank you, everyone. I love you. Thank you for coming. See you next week. And don't forget to submit your assignments. And if you need an extension, please do not be afraid to reach out. Because if there is prior communication that, okay, you cannot submit on time, I understand people are busy, people are working, people have jobs, people have families. So do tell me in time, and I will know that, okay, this person will not be able to submit this week. It's okay. And then I will give you an extension. All right. Bye.